Say your first and last name and spell it.
Larry Ruben. It's Larry Rubin.
And then you can look at me for most of the interview. Sorry about that. Okay,
No, it's a pleasure looking at you.
How many years were you in Atlanta, and tell me what you did there?
Well, I worked in Southwest Georgia, in Albany, Lee County, Dougherty County, and Baker County. We used to call it Owentero County. We used to call it Terrible Terrell, Bad Baker, Lousy Lee, and like that. And it was in late '61 through middle '62, and then I was sent to Mississippi, to northern Mississippi, to prepare for what came to be called Freedom Summer.
All right. And then how old were you at the time?
18.
I would say at the time.
Oh, at the time that I started working for SNCC as an organizer in Southwest Georgia, I was 18.
All right. And then what was that like being an 18-year-old civil rights freedom fighter at the time?
Well, you know, we didn't. What was it like to be an 18-year-old? That's a very good question, because we didn't consider ourselves 18-year-olds. We didn't think about it. We felt that we were working for freedom, and that we had a right to do this, and we were willing to risk our lives and risk all the dangers that it took to create a better world. And as a white person, I was creating a better world for myself. One of the reasons that I went south was that the Southern white senators and congressmen were running the government in the early '60s. And they were dismantling everything that my parents had fought for: union rights, scholarship rights, the whole New Deal. They were dismantling. And the reason that these people were in office and were gaining control of the government was, in many cases, because the majority of their constituents could not vote. And we felt, people like myself, that if blacks could vote, they would vote these sons of bitches out of office. And it would be good for all of us, be better for all of us. And I felt that any movement that was genuinely in the self-interest of the people who were fighting, genuinely, as opposed to, for example, today, the Tea Party people are being fooled. They're not fighting for their own interests. But if people are fighting for their own interests, it helps the world. It helps the country. And that's why I joined the freedom movement.
Right, and then what was the difference to you between SNCC, CORE, SCLC? Like, what was the difference from SNCC from those other organizations?
We organized, SCLC mobilized, CORE did a little mobilization and a lot of social service. They set up daycare centers and various programs. Like Julian Bond used to say, social service, going into social service is very noble, but if you have freedom, you don't need the social service. And we didn't put it that way then, but that's what we felt. But we were organizing. We were helping people who were risking their lives, first for integration of public services. I got in at that time in Southwest Georgia, but then and mostly for the right to vote. People felt that they were, in fact, citizens of the United States. They, in fact, had the right to vote, but they weren't allowed to exercise it. And to be a full person meant exercising your rights, and they were willing to fight and die, really to fulfill themselves as people. This was a matter of their soul. We used to say, you know, your body might belong to Caesar, you know, but your soul belongs to God. And God wants you to be free.
And then, were there any members from SNCC that were also freedom fighters?
Yes, most of the early ones.
So start to say, include a little bit of my question.
Yes. SNCC was actually started by three types of people. One were students who were freedom riders, but who stayed in the communities. Second, and most important, were World War II veterans who came back from the fighting Nazis, and they were not about to put up with the crap that they had to put up with in the South. And three, were black and white people like me who were students, and we left school to work for SNCC. The Freedom Rides, remember, were basically demonstrations. People got on buses in Washington, D.C., where we're sitting, and rode several places, mostly to Jackson, and they were demonstrating to see whether states were obeying the federal intercommerce laws, which said that you could not segregate, the ICC laws, interstate commerce laws. And so bus stations were part of that, covered by the federal law, not by state law. So their demonstrations was to show that a lot of the states were not, in fact, obeying federal law. That was all they were doing. They rode, a lot of them got beat up, a lot of them almost got killed, but then they left, most. And most of the local people really were not too aware of what was happening. They were aware in general. But some stayed in the communities. They became organizers. And those were the people that were one of the strains of SNCC.
All right, now the Atlanta Inquirer, the paper founded by the ASM and edited by Julian Vaughn, still exists. How important was it as an intra-informational tool?
Well, it was very important, as were the...
Don't say the Atlanta Inquirer.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The Atlanta Inquirer was very important, as were several of the African-American newspapers in the South, and in particular, the school newspapers in HBCs. And the reason it was important actually was two. The white media, which was the commercial media, was bought, sold, and owned by the segregationists. Later on, when I went to Holly Springs, Mississippi, the local paper literally was owned by the state senator from that area, who was a segregationist. He owned the paper. And in Atlanta and Georgia, it was similar. But the African-American papers, first of all, told the truth, and so got information out to the black community and to the white community. But secondly, it was a tool of empowerment, the Atlanta Inquirer was. African Americans in Atlanta and throughout Georgia said, we have our paper, you know? We have the capacity to have this paper that tells the truth. It was a self-empowering tool, just like the vote was a self-empowering tool. That's all it was.
And then what was your interaction with Julian Vaughn?
Well, in Atlanta, not much. because he was, I should say in Georgia, not much, because he was working in Atlanta. And I met him several times, but I was assigned into the real countryside, Baker County, as I said, Doherty, that area. But I got to know him very well here in Washington over the past 20 years. And he was one of the few leaders of the civil rights movement that in many ways transcended the civil rights movement.
Oh, and say that again and include his name in it.
Julian Bond was one of the few genuine leaders of the civil rights movement who in many ways transcended the civil rights movement. He got very active in gay rights,